the United States, Canada, Slovakia, the big seven, most of the top tier hockey countries do use professional NHL athletes. 1998, the Nagano Olympics, there really isn't much of a hockey heritage in Japan. I think the past 20 years they have done a fantastic job in trying to expand the game. But I think that was one of the first times I actually saw professionals play for their country. And it did help expand the NHL brand, the name. 2002, Salt Lake City. That's awesome, especially in the United States. Really the time wasn't really an issue. You're either 2 hours behind or 1 hour ahead. You were pretty much good on watching hockey games at prime time. The 2006 Olympics in Italy, 5 hour, 6 hour difference really isn't that much of a pain in the butt. The 2010 Olympics were the last time I really know that there was a huge success in the Olympics. It almost seemed that every single game, was a playoff game pretty much, and I think the Canada USA gold medal game really racked up there one of the best hockey games of the decade, if not the best. And then I think one of the biggest critiques was the 2014 Sochi Olympic Games, especially for NHL players. One, the one of the biggest games, the United States versus Russia, was on at 7 a.m. And I know that, I got up for that, but I certainly tell you a lot of casual hockey fans, a lot of fans who, probably would watch hockey for the Olympics, not only support the sport, but, for mainly Team USA, really didn't have an opportunity to watch it. And then you look at another issue that happened. Islander superstar, I always talk about him. John Tavares, blew out his knee, was out for the rest of the season, and along with his knee were the Islanders' rest of their season. Their postseason hopes were absolutely gone. I think really John Tavares was that team last year, and without him, the production went down, and unfortunately, so did the dreams going to the postseason. And where I'm going with this is, as we all know, Pyongyang in South Korea have the bid for the 2018 Winter Olympics, and the NHL is really trying to figure out whether it's worth having an Olympics filled with NHL superstars. And I think that in one opinion you can say, listen, the NHL, these players are still they might be superstars, the best league in the world, but they still represent their countries, and I think it is a dream for a lot of these players to represent their nation, win a gold medal, make their country proud. And I think that's what the Olympics are all about. But you look at the same way, the NHL does take a pretty big hit from sending their players out to foreign countries 12 hours away, because you lose the All-Star game, you lose a lot of revenue bringing ideas that the NHL would usually profit off, but unfortunately they don't now. Really, I just think that as a whole, the NHL, I think it's a split 50-50. I know I read an article that says that the NHL has to make a decision sooner than later. Honestly, I think that having NHL players, in the Olympics, whether it's the United States, Canada, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Germany, Russia, the list keeps on going on and on. But Finland, Sweden. But you look at you put amateurs in the league, and I think that amateurs, no disrespect, but there's a huge difference between an amateur player and a player in the NHL or the KHL or any professional league. You even look at Russia or Sweden, I think that 20% of their team do come from the KHL and do come from the the main hockey league in Sweden. I think when you take that away, you still have the amateur players. It will still be very entertaining hockey to watch. But you're kind of losing that edge that really does make hockey so entertaining to watch. So I know that Gary Bettman isn't very fond of the idea of sending NHL players. Eventually, we will find out what happens sooner than later, though. Hopefully, I'm just going to spit my opinion out there. I do believe that NHL players do believe to go to the Olympics. Not even regarding the fact that it'll be more entertaining to watch, but I believe that anyone should be able to represent their nation fairly. But then again, the players are under contract at the NHL with their NHL teams, and I do realize that it does take a big risk on putting players out there for a group of games that don't really matter to the NHL. I just think it's important in the way that it helps expand the game. I think the more entertaining, the more fast-paced, the more enjoyable it is to watch. I think that's a positive, outlook on how the NHL does and how the KHL, how all these major sports leagues around the world do. I mean, 2010, the gold medal game in the United States was 16.5 million people at noon, at 12 o'clock. And triple that in Canada. 45 million people in Canada were watching that game. That's I think almost 50% of their population was definitely watching that game. So I mean, and especially almost 17 million people watching in the U.S. alone. I mean, that's already a huge number right there. It doesn't sound like it's a big number compared to the 350 million, however, people are in the United States. But I just think that as a whole, the Olympics are very important for the recognition of the sport, and I think that getting away and taking NHL players out from it, just isn't smart in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. So also interesting news from the other week. The Hall of Fame inductees were finally announced. We have Bill McCreary, Dominic Hasek, and Peter Forsberg. Other huge names: Rob Blake, Mike Modano. Honestly, there was all these players. I have the utmost respect for all of them. Mike Modano, in my opinion, was one of the greatest American players to ever play the game. I remember talking to my dad's friend about this, saying, you watch him skate down the ice at 40 years old a few years ago, like 41, 42, and he was, looked faster and better than most 20-year-olds on the ice. So, I mean, these guys are amazing. Peter Forsberg, I think, if he stayed healthy, would have had the one of the greatest careers, would have been one of the best Swedish players to ever play the game of hockey. Dominic Hasek, in my opinion, I think is the greatest goaltender ever to play. I think it's Dominic Hasek's number 1, Patrick Waugh is number 2, and then Martin Brodeur is number 3. And especially if you look at Dominic Hasek, especially all those years he played with the Buffalo Sabres, and really carried that team on his back on most seasons he was with them. He didn't have the offense that Patrick Waugh had, where you had Peter Forsberg and Joe Sakic at the front, and then he didn't. Brodeur had the amazing defense. Scott Stevens, Scott Niedermayer, and Ken Danico. All these high profile names that really help the goalies. I'm not taking anything away from Patrick Waugh or Marty Brodeur, but honestly, I think that it is really, I think a lot of their success did come from how helpful their teammates were in helping, make sure that he wasn't, tempered around with, he wasn't pushed around. Where Dominic Hasek really just revolutionized the goalie position. He really carried the team in and out on his back. Played a very unique style of goaltending, and honestly, I think that it's a well-deserved nomination for Dominic Hasek. the 2 Stanley Cups he won with the Red Wings. I think that was one of the highlights of his career. Obviously, it should be for anyone. And I think that I think this is one of the best Hall of Fame classes we've had in a while. Bill McCreary, who is a very well-known referee, if not one of the most respected ones in the NHL for the past 20, 30 years. He got in. Rob Blake, one of the better defenders in the league. Played 20 plus years in the NHL. And honestly, I think that's enough. Because I feel like a lot of people look at Modano, Forsberg, Modano, Forsberg, Hasek. It's just it's kind of, the list goes on. You see Rob Blake, and you're like, wait, what? And then you look at his stats, and he all those years with the Kings, he won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche in 2001. And his offensive numbers were not that bad also. I'm looking at his stats right now. The Kings, we played with the Kings in 1998. The Kings in 2000 had 57 points. 2002 had 56 points at the Avalanche, and those are the Avalanche teams that were absolutely stacked with talent. So I mean, all these players that were inducted, it's they're more than deserving of it. And honestly, I think it doesn't need to go unannounced that all these players are legends in themselves. It just has people talking about who are going to be some of the next big names who do get inducted to the Hall of Fame. There was actually a poll out. They had Mark Recchi, Chris Osgood, Eric Lindros, Theo Fleury, Dave Andreychuk, Phil Housley. I mean, all these players have left an everlasting, huge legacy on the game. And I just, because I know I'm doing a report for Mike DeMerges' class, and I'm looking up facts about Theo Fleury. And if anyone doesn't know, Theo Fleury played with all these different teams for whether it's the Rangers, the Flames, you name it, he's been on them. Has been through a bit of a rough stretch during his career. He had sexual abuse problems with his old coach. And drug problems and you name it. He just really had a rough time. But that does not take away from how much of an electric scorer he was. In 10 seasons in the NHL, he scored 1,000 points, which is I think in short of itself just speaks to how electric of a player he was. And I think that seeing him in the Hall of Fame ballot, I think that not only is it respect to his character, I think that it's also impressive about how as an individual that he got over that hump, over that rough stretch where he wasn't in the right state of mind. I think that's safe to say that in a point where you do feel something is the matter with you, he realized that. He went to rehab. His wife helped him recover from whatever was happening with him. Actually came back in 2009-2010 season with the Calgary Flames. Did retire a Flame. His last season of actual NHL play was with the Chicago Blackhawks. So I think that if anyone's deserving of actually getting a spot in the NHL Hall of Fame, it has to be Theo Fleury. Eric Lindros, also one of the best power forwards the NHL's ever seen. Chris Osgood, very good goaltender. Played with the Red Wings, the Islanders. Was a big reason why the Red Wings got their Stanley Cup in 2008. Mark Recchi, amazing American player. Won the Stanley Cup. Recently won a Stanley Cup with the Bruins in 2011. Dave Andreychuk, captain of the Lightning. The list keeps on going on. Honestly, I think that it's commendable that how how these NHL players each have a story to their own, and that it does take a lot of respect to really enjoy how dominant their careers have been. So we're gonna take a break for now. I'll be back in a few minutes. We're talking about the Ranger game, what happened the other day, what we're going to expect tonight from the Lightning, different scenarios. So stick with us, and we'll tell you some hockey news.